Be ready. 15 seconds to go. 5 seconds to go. I should like to make a statement explaining what has happened and leave it to the chair to decide about this adjournment motion. Some weeks ago, government was faced with rather a difficult situation in regard to sugar. As the House is aware, we had decontrolled sugar in 1947 and sugar continued to be distributed without any intervention by government. It was only with regard to the fixation of prices that there used to be informal consultations and discussions between the central government and the governments of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and the industry. But even these prices were not fixed statutorily because we had decided upon decontrolling sugar. In the month of August or towards the end of July, it became apparent that as the prices of sugar were rising, government would have to take some action. We found that up to the month of June, the consumption of sugar was more or less at a normal rate. It is true that consumption of sugar had increased because during the period of control, many persons who did not otherwise use sugar got accustomed to using sugar as sugar was rationed to all card holders. Secondly, the price of sugar had also been lowered from rupees 35 to rupees 29. The result was some increase in consumption, but still, because there was a carryover of 2 lakh tons from the previous year, it was felt that we would be able to reach the end of the year without any difficulty. As the House is probably aware, production starts somewhere about the middle or third week of November, in some places in October, and in some other parts of India in December. Round about the month of July, two factors intervened. First of all, there was a talk of export of sugar to Pakistan and later on, possibly also to the United Kingdom. That talk had its reaction on the market. The second factor was that an announcement was made that as a result of the increased consumption up to June and July, a very small quantity of sugar remained with the factories. With about 3 to 4 months still ahead, the stock which was disclosed was definitely inadequate, probably meeting only half the needs. This itself had an effect on the market, and very speculative purchases were made during these days. I would like to take the House into the history of these provisions as they were discussed in the Constituent Assembly. Even at the time when the present Article 369 was being considered by the Constituent Assembly, there was a body of opinion which felt that limiting the parliamentary jurisdiction in respect of commodities like food, grains, and other agricultural products for a period of 5 years was taking a short view of the question. The basis of the decision of the drafting committee could be understood from para 14 of the letter written by the chairman of the drafting committee to the president of the Constituent Assembly. I am making reference to this letter of the chairman in order to point out that the recommendation of the chairman of the drafting committee to the president of the Constituent Assembly was based on a previous enactment, namely the provisions of the India Central Government and Legislature Act of 1946, which gave life in regard to the power exercised by the central legislature over those matters for a further period when the war legislation came to an end. It is not often that one looks back to what happened during the time when the Constituent Assembly was discussing, but it did give me a certain pleasure when I was looking into the proceedings of the Constituent Assembly to find that a friend of ours who is a member of this house had the far-sightedness to feel at the time when Article 306 of the draft constitution was being considered that the duration of the validity of the provisions of that article should be extended from 5 to 15 years. In fact, at that time, the honorable member expressed the opinion that in matters like foodstuffs, minerals, etc., the power of the government of India should be kept intact. Anyway, the Constituent Assembly did not accept the suggestion made by him. Even prior to this particular article being taken up for consideration by the Constituent Assembly in the several discussions that took place in regard to the distribution of powers between the center and the states, it was felt that parliamentary control should be provided over essential commodities other than those expressly covered by item 52 list 1 and item 33 of list 3 attached to the constitution of India. I had no intention to take part in this debate, but looking at the different points of view which different honorable members have put forward, I think I should mention the position as it is with regard to groundnut oil. It is a commodity, the production of which varies from year to year. It has got to a large extent to depend on the climate, rain, and so forth. It is difficult to evaluate the crop because groundnut is grown in different parts of the country and it begins to move in one part in October and November and in some other parts in December and January. Therefore, it is difficult to evaluate the exact position of groundnut. Besides, we do not have correct data as regards the crop. Unfortunately, our statistics with regard to agricultural production are meager and it is difficult to know exactly what the crops are of different commodities. and therefore it is difficult to evaluate even the crops. I would also like to inform the House that of the total crop of groundnuts, exports are to the extent of 2.5 to 5%. There is not so much of surplus as it is somehow or other felt here.